Hey you guys, Stephen Bogart here from Pro Physique, and today I'm going to teach you how to set up a calorie deficit.
My name is Steven, and this is our video about health and fitness things. And I work for Pro Physique, and I am just a guy with a fitness thing for you.
Alright everybody, so thank you so much Michael for this question. So if you guys are like, hey man, this was a beautiful video, go back to how we burn body fat and tell Michael thank you. Say, hey Steven, and I'll go ahead and post this question here. Maybe you could do a video on how to set up a calorie deficit. I'm weighing 230 pounds and want to get down to 190 and I'm 6 feet tall. So there are a couple things that we want to understand about setting up a calorie deficit that are going to be just universal. And even though we're at this height and weight and we have a weight goal that we want to get to, this will apply to absolutely everyone. Now, I just threw my phone. I probably shouldn't have because I need my phone. It makes this process much easier because where we start is by tracking a couple pieces of data. The first and foremost one is going to be your weight. Now, how do I do that, Stephen? My weight changes throughout the day. Yep. It sure does. And day to day, your weight will fluctuate. What we want to do is we want to wake up, go to the bathroom, whatever that means, a number 1 or number 2, maybe a number 3, which is both, whatever that might be for us, and just weigh in. We want to start tracking our weight to see what trends are happening and looking at averages. Don't get too caught up in your head, but do pay attention to, are we gaining weight, are we losing weight, or are we maintaining weight? And that's going to be piece number 1. Piece number 2 of that is knowing what our food is. At the very least, we need to know calories. But even better than calories is understanding what are our macronutrients or energy yielding nutrients and what do those look like. That's going to mean tracking our food, what we're eating and drinking, without necessarily making any changes. The reason we don't want to make any changes is because we want to continue doing the thing that we've been doing. Particularly if we've been maintaining weight, we want to know exactly what is going on. So we don't want to change all of our eating and drinking habits right out of the gate. We want to have that data to see what that looks like, and then we can make educated changes based on that. So then, once we start getting that information, now we can start looking at how do things look. Because there are multiple ways for us to create a calorie deficit, and one of them's food, one of them's exercise, some of them's even just changing out our foods. So once we have that information, now we can start looking at what's going on. The great news is, if you start tracking your food and you realize that you're losing weight already, guess what? You're already in a calorie deficit. Because that is what we are going to define a calorie deficit as, is we are burning more calories than we are consuming, which will result in a drop in body mass. It means weight is coming down over time. If we are maintaining weight, wonderful, we're at maintenance. We're not in a deficit, but it's going to be probably a little bit easier for us to manage that. And if we are gaining weight, we are in what we would call a calorie surplus. We are eating more than we are burning. This means we're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the changes that we make. However, it can sometimes be still quite reasonable to get into a deficit even if we're in a surplus, depending on what our lifestyle factors look like, what our diet looks like, and how we're managing things. The hard part is getting into this idea of just weighing and tracking our food so that we have that data. It is difficult, particularly at first. And so for a lot of us, the easiest thing to do is get that data first and foremost, and then as we start making changes, kind of make ourselves a meal plan that fits the new numbers that we want to hit. That can be probably the easiest way because now you're not having to change foods all the time, you're not having to weigh, you're not having to do it at every single meal. You have your foods prepped out, cooked up, ready for the week, and set up for success. But once we have this number, and we'll just utilize some generalized numbers for an individual that, we'll say my height. I know, Michael, we wanted to talk about your height, but we'll use me as an example. 5'10", 180 pounds, 183, right? Low 180s right now. Currently eating 2,800 calories a day and maintaining weight. Now, I'm not doing any structured cardio on purpose, right? But I do go to jiu-jitsu a couple days a week at least, and I have some expenditure there, and I lift 5 to 6 days a week. So if I'm already lifting, there's calorie expenditure there. If you're not lifting, sometimes you can get yourself into a deficit just by starting a lifting program. Maybe going into the gym 3 days a week, you're now burning calories. And even if you're not necessarily seeing weight change significantly, you can start seeing really nice body composition changes. Ooh, my shoulders are looking good. My chest is a little bit bigger. My abs, I can see a little bit of abs here, right? Which can be amazing. If we take that and we pair that with extra expenditure, maybe via cardiovascular activity and possibly a calorie cut, well, now we can start seeing weight moving. For me, I try to generally get around a 400 calories per day, 300 to 400 calories per day in terms of drop. Now, when I like to make that drop, I try to do it in a mixture of both energy expenditure via cardiovascular activity, as well as a calorie drop. This is considering that we're getting enough protein already and our carbohydrates and fats are in a place where we have room to go. If I were at 2,000 calories a day, I probably would not be making a calorie drop. My calories are already quite low. And if your protein is not high enough, we'll say as a physique athlete, maybe just simply switching out some of your carbohydrate and or fat calories if you have an excess of one or the other to protein calories can also make a really big impact in terms of how you look, your body composition, and sometimes, yes, even your weight. Even though, yes, it's the same calories, the way that our body processes those and what they're being used for can be very different. Remember, protein and eating protein in its nature is what we would call anabolic, which means if we eat enough protein in a sitting, our body says, let's make new muscle. Let's repair and build. It's a beautiful thing. So I might make a 200 calorie cut. Now, I will never cut calories from protein itself. I will make that calorie cut from carbohydrates and or fats. Fats I'm always looking at. I don't like going below 45 if I can ever prevent it. I will never go below 35. So if fats are our higher macronutrient, say we're eating 100 grams of fats a day and maybe less carbohydrates, I will probably make a bigger cut from fats because that's the pool that I have to work with. Now, if it's the other way around, beautiful. I get to work with carbohydrates and I can make a cut to carbohydrates. Now, like I said, along with that, I like to increase activity, movement, energy expenditure. So I will oftentimes say, okay, if I'm doing no structured cardio, maybe I'm just going to start off doing 2 hours a week and add that into my regimen. So I'm going to do half-hour sessions 4 days a week. That's going to go on top of what I'm already doing, and I'm going to make a bit of a calorie cut. From there, I want to give myself at least 1 week to look and see what progress I'm making. I don't want to necessarily look at the day-to-day. Sometimes that can work out in my favor, which is beautiful. But most of us have normal daily fluctuation in terms of our weight. Therefore, we want to give it at least 1 full week before making any extra changes on top of that. Now, say you had a stressful week or something's going on, we might even want to give that a 2nd week without making any changes to what we're doing, even if we're not seeing progress. Because things like stress, sleep, changes in sodium, changes in fiber can all affect the scale. Even being more active can affect the scale because we're just holding on to extra inflammation. Oh, I'm so sore. Yeah, that's extra water weight that we're holding onto. Can also affect our digestion if our digestion's not doing well. Or if we start eating a lot more vegetables and fibrous food sources, we can literally be full of duke. We can be full of poop because that fiber is holding water within our digestive tract. So it might not be quite as indicative on that 1st week or while we're really just starting to make those changes. So some of the other things that we want to look at in terms of our deficit could maybe be measurements, chest, waist, hips, butt, those kind of things as well, to see if we're making improvements on those measures and how we're looking in the mirror, as well as how our clothes are fitting. But if we see that we are making these changes and we're not seeing improvements on the scale and we're not seeing it go in the direction we want, then we make the next improvements. Then maybe we change some things and get a little bit more aggressive. Then maybe we add some more cardio. The goal should be to do the least amount of work to get a reasonable amount of change each week. If we're getting a pound a week, that's really good. If you're getting 1% of your body weight a week, that's really good. And I would manage and maintain that as long as possible. When that starts to slow down, that's when I'd add things to get a little bit more aggressive. And of course, remembering there's only a certain amount of aggressiveness that I want to utilize to make sure that we set ourselves up for the long term and plan for coming out of the diet. So I hope that that helps to talk about how we create a deficit. It's simple. We cut calories, we increase cardio, but remember, have your hard lines of where you're not willing to go.